Ghoul, an anime series created by Sui Ishida. The story explores a world where ghouls that look human but must consume human flesh to survive, hidden among the population and constantly hunted by a government agency called the Commission of Counter Ghoul, or the CCG. Late in the afternoon, our timid protagonist Ken Kaneki goes on a date with the enigmatic and beautiful Rizz Kamishiro, unaware that this encounter will change his life forever. The two bond over their shared love for literature, with Kaneki feeling an unfamiliar comfort in Rise's presence. As their date ends, Rise confides her fear of the recent ghoul attacks in the city, prompting Kaneki to offer to walk her home for her safety. As they walk through a dimly lit alley, Kaneki confesses his feelings for Rise, and she seemingly reciprocates. However, Rise's intentions are far from innocent. She reveals her true nature as a ghoul, and attacks Kaneki with sadistic delight. He tries desperately to escape, but she overpowers him, throwing him against a wall and leaving him helpless. Just as Rise is about to devour him, fate intervenes. A bundle of steel beams falls from above, crushing Rise and saving Kaneki's life at the last possible moment. As Kaneki drifts in and out of consciousness, he hears the doctors discussing the procedure, unaware of the profound transformation taking place within him. When Kaneki awakens, he quickly discovers that he can no longer eat normal human food. Every attempt to eat results in violent rejection, and the news confirms his worst fears. Ghouls are unable to consume anything but human flesh. The horrifying realization dawns on him, and he has become the very monster he once feared. His best friend, Hideyoshi Nagachika, grows concerned about Kaneki's isolation, but Kaneki refuses any visitors. Wandering the city in a daze, Kaneki is tormented by the scent of human flesh all around him, struggling desperately to suppress his new, monstrous hunger. In a moment of despair, he even tries to stab himself, hoping to deny the reality of his existence, but his body has already changed beyond recognition. Drawn by an irresistible aroma reminiscent of his mother's cooking, Kaneki stumbles upon a corpse being devoured by another ghoul named Kazuo. Kazuo offers Kaneki a share, but another ghoul, Nishiki Nishio, appears and kills Kazuo, claiming the territory as his own. Nishiki suffocates Kaneki, suspecting him of trespassing. Just as Kaneki is about to be killed, Toka Kirishima, also a ghoul, intervenes and orders Nishiki to leave, asserting her claim over the area. Nishiki was pissed and attacks Toka, but she was stronger than him, giving Nishiki a lot of bruises, and he runs. Kaneki remains tormented by his hunger and the horror of consuming human flesh.
No way, no way, no way, no way! There's no way that I can ever eat another person's flesh! Well, I won't, cause I'm a human!
Seeing his suffering, Toka forcefully helps Kaneki take his first bite. Kaneki remains in denial about his monstrous nature. He insists he's not like the other ghouls, especially Toka, who responds with anger and frustration. Toka, hardened by a life of suffering as a ghoul, can't sympathize with Kaneki's despair. To her, Kaneki's grief over his lost humanity is a luxury. She's been a ghoul since birth and never had a choice. She beats Kaneki, demanding to know what he thinks he is if not a monster, and reminds him that the hunger they endure is its own kind of hell. Their confrontation is interrupted by Kuzan Yoshimura, the gentle manager of Anteku Cafe. He stops Toka, inviting Kaneki inside and offering him coffee, the only thing, besides human flesh, that ghouls can enjoy. Kaneki hesitates, fearing it will taste horrible, but is surprised to find comfort in its warmth and flavor. Still, Yoshimura warns him that coffee alone can never satisfy a ghoul's hunger. He hands Kaneki an envelope, reassuring him that if he ever needs more of that, he shouldn't hesitate to ask. The next morning, Kaneki decides to return to university. His best friend, Hideyoshi, is overjoyed to see him back. Hideyoshi brings Kaneki along to Nishiki's office, but when they got to the door, Nishiki was having sex with a woman. The woman was terrified and ran away. Hideyoshi is searching for some data, but it's not there. Nishiki says it's at his place and invites him over to his house. Kaneki was fearful for Hideyoshi's safety since Hideyoshi doesn't know Nishiki as a ghoul, so he insists on coming along. Under a bridge, Nishiki suddenly attacks, kicking Hideyoshi aside and confronting Kaneki. He accuses Kaneki of wanting to eat Hideyoshi, taunting him with the question of when and which part he'll consume. But Kaneki said that his friend is not a food. Nishiki beats Kaneki mercilessly, but Kaneki refuses to let his friend be harmed. In desperation, Kaneki's Kagune, a ghoul weapon, manifests, and he attacks Nishiki with a ferocity that surprises Nishiki because Kaneki's Kagune was Rise's Kagune. Rise tempts him to devour Hideyoshi. Because of hunger, Kaneki nearly gives in, but Toka arrives just in time. She coldly tells him to go ahead and eat Hideyoshi if he wants, warning that he'll regret it forever if he does. Kaneki loses consciousness and wakes up back in Anteku. Yoshimura shows him that Hideyoshi is safe and Kaneki didn't eat him, though he still tastes blood on his lips. Yoshimura admits that while Kaneki slept, They fed him to keep his hunger at bay, otherwise, he might have killed his friend. Overwhelmed with guilt and loneliness, Kaneki breaks down, feeling like he doesn't belong in either world. But Yoshimura gently reassures him. As someone who is both human and ghoul, Kaneki can move between both worlds. He invites Kaneki to work at Anteku, promising that in time, Kaneki will find his own answers and decide for himself whether them are truly monsters. Kaneki accepts the offer and Yoshimura is gonna teach him to make their best coffee, while Hideyoshi overhears everything pretended to be unconscious. After Yoshimura taught Kaneki how to make coffee, Kaneki went downstairs to assist Toka with her work. Shortly after, Hideyoshi stopped by the cafe to thank Toka for her help, then promptly left. Toka warned Kaneki that Hideyoshi must never discover their ghoul identities, or they would have to kill him, leaving Kaneki on edge. Ryoko and Hinami Fueguchi, a mother and daughter, arrived at the cafe and sought out Yoshimura. Later, Yoshimura asked Kaneki to work a late shift, as Toka was busy with college exams. Kaneki initially refused, unwilling to kill humans because Yoshimura wants Kaneki to food shopping. Yoshimura reassured him that they acquire their food without killing. Intrigued, Kaneki questioned how they obtained their food, leading Yoshimura to instruct him to meet with Yomo to uncover the answer. Yomo took Kaneki to a cliff. When Kaneki placed his hand on a metal beam, it weakened, causing him to fall. He was saved by his Kagune, only to find a human corpse at the cliff's base. Yomo explained that these were people who had given up on life and chose to end it, revealing that Anteku consumed the bodies of those who had committed suicide. Meanwhile, CCG investigator Kureo Mato, while undercover in ghoul territory, was attacked by a ghoul, whom he swiftly defeated. Kureo questioned the ghoul about a certain item, but the ghoul was unable to answer and was killed. Yoshimura told Kaneki that he needed a mask. Yoshimura asked Toka to accompany Kaneki to Yuta's shop, despite her initial refusal. Yoshimura explained that 2 CCG investigators were active in the 20th ward, emphasizing the need for Kaneki to conceal his identity. Toka reluctantly agreed. At Yuta's shop, Yuta took Kaneki's measurements for the mask. On their way home, Kaneki asked Toka about Hinami, expressing his desire to help. Toka revealed that Hinami had been forced to leave with Ryoko, leaving her father behind. Kaneki then inquired about the purpose of the masks, to which Toka replied that they were used to evade detection by CCG investigators. The CCG continued to eliminate ghouls who were ignorant about the item they were seeking. Kaneki attempted to speak with Hinami, but she was eating, which startled him, so he left. Koma provided Kaneki with coffee to give to Hinami, as a means for Kaneki to apologize for intruding on her private space. Kaneki delivered the coffee and apologized. As Kaneki was about to leave, Hinami asked him what he truly was, and Kaneki responded that he was both human and ghoul. Sharing a love for literature, the two found common ground and bond together. Tsukiyama went to Anteku and noticed Kaneki there, but he left shortly after. Despite this, Tsukiyama became interested in Kaneki. Toka warned Kaneki to be careful around Tsukiyama because he was a dangerous person. At school, while Kaneki was reading, Tsukiyama approached him and they talked about books and Rizz. Tsukiyama invited Kaneki to have coffee with him the next day. Even though Toka warned Kaneki, he agreed to go. After Kaneki's shift, Yomo wanted to talk to him. They went to a secluded place where Yomo told Kaneki that since there was a CCG investigator roaming the 20th ward, Kaneki needed to protect himself. Yomo attacked Kaneki and easily knocked him down, then suggested that from now on, Kaneki would train with him after work. Afterward, Yomo took Kaneki to his friend Atori, who had something to tell Kaneki. Atori gave Kaneki some blood and threw it in his face so Kaneki could see that he was truly a one-eyed ghoul. Atori apologized and instead gave Kaneki coffee. Atori wondered if other one-eyed ghouls in the 20th ward were like Kaneki, which surprised Kaneki and made him curious about his half-ghoul peers. Atori asked Kaneki what he thought would happen if a human and a ghoul fell in love. Kaneki guessed their child might be half-ghoul and half-human. Atori said such children usually die because humans and ghouls are incompatible, but a small percentage survive, like Kaneki himself. Atori added that half-breed ghouls are stronger than full-breed ghouls, but their ghoul eye is on the right side, unlike Kaneki's, which is on the left. Kaneki asked Atori if he knew anything about Rizz because he had no information about her after recent events. Atori said Rizz was always causing trouble and that her death was a mystery. Kaneki thought it was an accident, but Atori said there are some rumors that someone was on top of the building when Rizz died, though they didn't know if it was true. The next morning, Kaneki met Tsukiyama and asked what kind of things he and Rizz used to talk about. Tsukiyama said they talked about literature and fine dinings. However, he remembered how Rizz insulted his taste in food, which made him break his cup. Kaneki tried to help Tsukiyama but got hurt. Tsukiyama told Kaneki about a place Rizz often visited, and Kaneki agreed to go with him. Kaneki's wound stopped bleeding, so Tsukiyama took his handkerchief, even though it still had Kaneki's blood on it. In the bathroom, Tsukiyama became obsessed with Kaneki and smelled his blood. Kaneki arrived at the place Rizz used to visit and the maid gave him coffee. He asked the maid where Tsukiyama was, but she didn't answer and left. Suddenly, the room darkened, and Kaneki didn't realize Tsukiyama had taken him to an auction hall. He realized he was trapped and forced to fight Taro. Kaneki ran from Taro until he was cornered. He dodged Taro's repeated slashes, almost getting cut. Kaneki tried to kick Taro, but it had no effect. Tsukiyama waited for Kaneki to use his Kagune. Kaneki slipped on spilled blood and Taro kicked him away. Taro was delighted and strangled Kaneki tightly, but Kaneki used his strength to break free and punch Taro. The crowd was shocked to see Kaneki as a one-eyed ghoul, as well as Tsukiyama. Taro stood up, intending to kill Kaneki, but Tsukiyama stabbed Taro in the back. Tsukiyama apologized for bringing Kaneki there and he finished Taro because he didn't want Kaneki, who was a legend, to be wasted. Tsukiyama apologized to Kaneki and told him to forget what had happened. As Kaneki was walking, he noticed Nishiki being beaten up. Unable to ignore the situation, he rushed in to help, especially since the attackers were going too far. A man tried to stop Kaneki, saying they were going to eat Nishiki because they were ghouls too. Kaneki skillfully dodged their punches and kicks, and to his own surprise, he managed to knock the man down. Even he couldn't believe he had actually defeated him. Kaneki helped Nishiki return home. When they arrived, Kimi was visibly worried. Nishiki often came home injured, and it broke her heart. She was angry at Kaneki, still remembering how he had stabbed Nishiki before, but Nishiki told her to let it go and went to sleep. Kaneki asked Kimi why she was with a ghoul even though she was human. Kimi quietly replied that she loved Nishiki. She admitted that even though he hurt others and killed people to survive, she was okay with it, as long as he never harmed her family. Then, Kimi asked Kaneki what she could do to help Nishiki. Kaneki explained that Nishiki needed human flesh to survive, otherwise, he could die. Kimi didn't know how to handle that reality, so Kaneki promised her he'd find a way to help. Later, Kimi was kidnapped by Tsukiyama. Kaneki tried to find something at Anteku that could help Nishiki, but came up empty. Then, he saw a letter on the window. It was from Tsukiyama. The note revealed that Tsukiyama had taken Kimi. Soon after, there was a knock at the door. It was Nishiki, worried because Kimi hadn't come home. When he saw the letter, his face twisted with anger. He knew Tsukiyama was dangerous. Kaneki told him that Tsukiyama really wanted him, not Kimi. He promised Nishiki that he would accept Tsukiyama's invitation and bring Kimi back. But Nishiki insisted on coming along. He refused to just sit and do nothing while Kimi was caught in the middle of all this. They eventually arrived at the church where Tsukiyama was holding Kimi. Nishiki demanded that Tsukiyama release her, but Tsukiyama refused. He wanted Kaneki to devour Kimi. Tsukiyama blamed Kaneki for his obsession, saying it was Kaneki who tempted him and drove him to this madness. Nishiki charged at Tsukiyama in anger, but Tsukiyama effortlessly struck him down. Kaneki tried to fight too, but Tsukiyama dodged his attacks and countered with brutal punches and kicks. Just as Kaneki was being overwhelmed, Toka arrived and slashed Tsukiyama's eye. The wound healed quickly, but the fight was on. Toka and Kaneki teamed up, attacking Tsukiyama together. Despite their efforts, Tsukiyama managed to overpower them both, breaking Kaneki's right arm and punching him hard. He licked Kaneki's blood off his hand and moaned in delight from its taste. Toka tried to kick him again, but Tsukiyama easily blocked her and stabbed her with his Kagune. Then he turned his attention to Kimi, intending to eat her. But as he approached, he saw the large scar on her left shoulder. In the past, after Nishiki returned home injured because of Kaneki, he lost control of his hunger. Kimi discovered his secret, that he was a ghoul. Nishiki believed that was the end for him, expecting her to report him to the CCG, just like what happened to his sister. But instead, Kimi didn't say a word. She offered her shoulder and told him to bite her. Back in the present, Nishiki charged at Tsukiyama once again, reckless, desperate to protect the woman he loved. But Tsukiyama stabbed him and knocked him unconscious. Still, Nishiki refused to give up. Even as Tsukiyama repeatedly stabbed him without mercy, he clung to him, trying to protect Kimi. Kaneki asked Toka who would win in a fight between her and Tsukiyama if both were at full strength. She said they were evenly matched. That gave Kaneki an idea. He called out to Tsukiyama and offered him a sight he couldn't ignore, Toka eating a small piece of Kaneki's flesh. Tsukiyama snapped in fury because Kaneki belonged only to him. Enraged, he attacks, but Toka, now fully revitalized from Kaneki's flesh, blocked him with ease. Toka launched a surprise attack on Tsukiyama, tearing into him with her Kagune and wounding him badly, knocking him to the ground. But instead of being angry, Tsukiyama was delighted. He hadn't seen this level of power from Toka in a long time. His wounds healed quickly, and the battle continued. They clashed fiercely, but Toka ultimately overpowered him and sent him flying. Knowing he couldn't defeat Toka in his current state, Tsukiyama set his sights on Kimi, intending to eat a piece of her to regain his strength. But Nishiki, though weakened, still had enough strength and consciousness to stop him. Tsukiyama viciously kicked Nishiki, trying to get him out of the way. But that distraction proved costly. Toka seized the opportunity and severed Tsukiyama's right arm, defeating him for good. Nishiki rushed to help Kimi, but Toka stopped him. She insisted on handling Kimi herself. In Toka's eyes, Kimi was now a threat. She knew their secret, that they were ghouls, and she planned to kill her. But Kaneki intervened. He reminded Toka that Kimi was just like Hideyoshi was to him. Just like how Toka saw Yoriko. He asked her a painful question. If Yoriko were in Kimi's place right now, could you really kill her? Angry and conflicted, Toka still charged at Kimi. But Nishiki threw himself in front of her, shielding her from the attack. Kimi's blindfold had come off, and even in Toka's ghoul form, she found her beautiful. That moment of sincerity softened Toka's heart, and she turned away, walking out without another word. After the incident at the church, Nishiki decided to join Anteku. Meanwhile, Toka, shaken by what had happened, stopped coming to work for a while. Elsewhere, Hinami suddenly lashed out at her mother and locked herself in her room. Kaneki tried to speak to her but couldn't get through. Instead, he spoke with Ryoko, who explained that Hinami was upset because she missed her father and they had no idea what had become of him. In the office of Hinami's father, Asaki, a ghoul named Yamori arrived. Asaki handed Yamori an item that the CCG investigators had also been asking for among ghouls. Asaki pleaded with Yamori not to go there anymore, that he just wanted to live a peaceful life. Yamori pretended to agree, then suddenly attacked him. Later, Ryoko explained to Kaneki that Asaki had once been involved in a dangerous underworld business in the 13th ward, but gave it up when Hinami was born to focus on being a father. Back at Asaki's office, Yamori threw him out the door, where CCG investigators Mado and Amon were waiting. They immediately recognized Yamori as an S-rated ghoul from the 13th ward and drew their quinks. They fought him together, but Yamori dodged their attacks with ease. With a sadistic grin, he told them he'd play with them for 2 minutes. In a flash, he was behind Amon, landing brutal punches and kicks. Mado launched a relentless assault and believed he had finally trapped Yamori with his quink. But Yamori revealed his Kagune and shattered the weapon. With the 2 minutes up, Yamori left, uninterested in continuing. Mado tried to question Asaki, but the desperate father used his own ghoul powers to attack, only to be swiftly and mercilessly killed by Mado. Meanwhile, Hinami and Ryoko went out to buy a book, but Ryoko noticed CCG investigators nearby and quickly led Hinami away. Unfortunately, the agent spotted them and gave chase. Hinami suddenly caught the scent of her father and followed it, leading them into an alley where Mado and Amon had cornered them. More CCG agents surrounded them. Realizing there was no escape, Ryoko released her Kagune and attacked the investigators. She turned to Hinami and told her to run to Anteku. Hinami hesitated, terrified to leave her mother, but Ryoko promised she would follow soon. Without other choice, Hinami ran, leaving her mother behind. Kaneki noticed Hinami running across the street, panic evident in her expression. Concerned, he quickly crossed over and asked her what was wrong. Through tears, Hinami told him about her mother, and without hesitation, they both rushed to her location. Mado knew that Ryoko wasn't used to fighting because her Kagune was weak, and it irritated him how she clung to human-like behavior, sacrificing herself for her daughter. Ryoko was shocked when she realized that Mado had turned Asaki's Kagune into a Quinque. That's when the awful truth hit her. Her husband was dead. Kaneki and Hinami had arrived but hid in the shadows, unsure of what to do. Ryoko, overwhelmed with despair, could do nothing but cry, and in the end, she died. Kaneki gently covered Hinami's eyes so she wouldn't see what had happened to her mother. Hours passed. Toka returned to Anteku, only to find it closed. Looking through the other room, she saw Kaneki and the others gathered inside, sorrow heavy in the air. She walked in and asked what had happened. Yoshimura explained everything about Ryoko's death. Furious, Toka demanded to know what happened to Hinami. Yoshimura answered that Hinami was sleeping in the other room. When the time comes, he planned to move her to the 24th ward for safety. But Toka refused. She insisted that Hinami wouldn't survive on her own. In her rage, she suggested they start killing the CCG investigators one by one. Yomo calmly disagreed, explaining that even if they killed the CCG in the 20th ward now, more would simply come to replace them, and eventually, they'd all be hunted down. Kaneki blamed himself for everything that happened. Unable to accept Ryoko's death, Toka ambushed the CCG investigators. She killed Kusaba and nearly finished off Nakajima, but Amon arrived just in time to save him. Toka kicked Amon, sending him sprawling. She unleashed her Kagune, cornering Amon with fierce speed. That's when Mado appeared. Toka dodged Mado's Quinque with furious precision. Mado, taunting her, spoke cruelly about Ryoko, knowing she had been Toka's friend. Enraged, Toka attacked with everything she had, but Mado evaded her blows. While fending her off, Mado explained to Amon that ghouls with Ukaku, Kagune tend to rely on speed and rapid attacks, but their stamina is poor. If the battle dragged on, they would quickly grow weaker. Eventually, Mado knocked Toka to the ground and demanded to know where Ryoko's daughter was, intending to kill her too. Toka, enraged, charged recklessly and was wounded by Mado. Still, she managed to escape, his Quin K unable to reach her. Later, Kaneki heard a noise in the kitchen. It was Toka, battered and bleeding. Yoshimura asked if she had fought the CCG. Kaneki wanted to help her, but Yoshimura held him back, saying she had disobeyed them. Toka left, but Kaneki couldn't let it go. He followed her, insisting on treating her wounds. She resisted, but Kaneki pleaded. He didn't want to be someone who stood by and did nothing while others suffered. Mado and Amon were headed toward the water tunnel, as Mado's instincts told him that Toka and Hinami would go there. Meanwhile, Hinami sensed something outside, her nose picking up a familiar scent. Toka also heard a noise from Hinami's room and rushed there, only to find the window open and Hinami already gone. Kaneki and Toka immediately set out to search for Hinami. Hinami, now in the water tunnel, discovered a bag. When she opened it and realized what was inside, she screamed loudly in shock and horror. Kaneki and Toka heard her scream and rushed to the scene, only to find Amon already chasing after Toka. Kaneki intervened to stop Amon from getting to her. Toka spotted Hinami, who was in tears. Toka asked what happened, and Hinami replied that the bag contained her mother. Toka was stunned. She told Hinami that they needed to leave immediately, but Hinami refused. She still wanted to go to her mother. Then they heard footsteps and it was Mado. Mado was the one who had placed the dismembered remains of Hinami's mother in the bag. Enraged, Toka transformed and prepared for battle. Kaneki continued to struggle with Amon, trying to keep him from reaching Toka and Hinami, but he was overpowered. Meanwhile, Toka and Mado clashed. Toka used her speed to tangle Mado's Quin K into the surroundings, creating an opening to gain the upper hand. Both Amon and Toka fought with heavy hearts, Amon grieving for his partner Kusaba, and Toka mourning Ryoko. Amon blamed the ghouls for the world's suffering, while Toka blamed the CCG investigators. As Toka prepared to finish Mado, he revealed that he had turned Ryoko's Kagune into a Quin K and used it to push Toka back. Hinami was shocked to see her mother's Kagune used as a weapon. Kaneki, lying on the ground, questioned the world around him. Are ghouls truly the problem? Was there any logical reason Ryoko had to die? From what he had seen, ghouls feel emotions just like humans, they're not so different. But humans didn't understand that. Only Kaneki could see both sides, because he was both human and ghoul. Kaneki tried to explain to Amon that it wasn't only ghouls who were at fault, humans shared the blame too. While some ghouls had chosen a dark path, others had not. They needed to understand one another. Amon couldn't comprehend what Kaneki was saying, so Kaneki resolved to show him. Mado had Toka pinned, and he was about to take Hinami too. Kaneki stopped resisting Amon and allowed himself to be beaten, unable to find the strength to make Amon understand. But then, Kaneki activated his ghoul powers, biting Amon's right shoulder. Even though he had tasted human flesh, Kaneki retained control. He unleashed his Kagune and fought back. Amon realized that Kaneki was targeting his Quin K, and Kaneki managed to destroy it. Despite losing his weapon, Amon refused to back down. Kaneki pleaded with him to run. He was close to losing control, but Amon persisted, and Kaneki inflicted a deep wound on him. Still, Kaneki begged, not wanting to become a killer. Mado was about to kill Toka using Asaki's Kagune, but suddenly, Hinami's Kagune emerged. She severed Mado's right arm. Mado was thrilled. Hinami had inherited both her mother's and father's Kagune, and that only made him want her more. But Hinami countered his attacks, slicing one of his legs. Toka urged her to finish Mado, but Hinami refused. She didn't care about revenge. Mado stood again, determined to kill Hinami, but Toka finished him off. Elsewhere, Amon was confused. Why had Kaneki let him go? Kaneki, now losing control and acting like Rizz, attacked Yomo without realizing it was him. Yomo, understanding why Yoshimura had taken an interest in Kaneki, wanted to see what the boy would become. He calmed Kaneki down and gave him food, helping him regain control. Later, Toka removed Mado's gloves and was surprised to find a ring on his finger. Kaneki and Yomo arrived where Toka and Hinami were, and they all left together. Amon found Mado's lifeless body, and overcome with grief, he cried out in anguish. After everything that happened, Hinami stayed with Toka for a while, and little by little, her energy began to return. Life slowly started to feel normal again. Meanwhile, Kaneki went to Atori's bar to talk. He opened up about losing control and accidentally stabbing Yomo because of Rizz. Haunted by what happened, Kaneki was desperate for information about her, but even Atori didn't know much. All she could do was suggest he look into the 11th ward, Riz's original home before she moved to the 20th ward. Koma and Nishiki discussed how things had taken a dark turn in the 11th ward. Yomo had warned them that ghouls there were banding together to take on the CCG, and a war might begin. Toka, on the other hand, was quietly struggling with guilt because he killed Mado, who had a family. The group known as Aogiri Tree launched a brutal attack on one of the CCG's branch offices. A CCG investigator managed to inform Special Class Investigator Atsuki Marude about the assault, but was killed shortly after delivering the news. Back at Anteiku, a group of ghouls arrived, led by Banjo Kazuichi. They were looking for Yoshimura, but Kaneki calmly told them that he wasn't there. Toka stepped in, trying to defuse the tension, and told them that if they weren't there for a fight, they should sit down and order some coffee. Left with no choice, Banjo complied, and they began to talk. Kaneki asked what Banjo wanted from Yoshimura, offering to relay any message himself. Banjo also wanted to know if they knew Rise. He revealed he was from the 11th ward and had known Rise when she still lived there. Suddenly, Banjo caught a familiar scent. Kaneki smelled just like Rise. Confused and jealous, he asked if Kaneki was Rise's boyfriend. Overcome with emotion, Banjo started throwing punches, but Kaneki headbutted him and knocked him out cold. Meanwhile, the CCG held an emergency meeting. Marude announced grim news: the 11th ward branch had been wiped out. Not a single soul had survived the attack. A few hours later, Banjo regained consciousness. Embarrassed and regretful, he apologized to Kaneki for jumping to conclusions. He asked if Kaneki knew where Rise was now. Kaneki, hiding the truth, told him Rise had already left the 20th ward. Banjo understood, but he had one request: if Kaneki ever saw Rise again, tell her to run. Banjo then shared a disturbing story. Months ago, a gang of ghouls calling themselves Aogiri Tree appeared in the 11th ward. After wiping out every other ghoul faction, they turned their attention to the CCG. Banjo didn't know why they were searching for Rise, but he was certain it couldn't be for anything good. He warned Kaneki, they would be coming to the 20th ward next. If they didn't leave, they'd all die. Just then, Ayato Kirishima, Toka's younger brother, showed up and kicked Banjo without warning. Yamori and Nico also entered Anteiku, which surprised Banjo. He tried to tell Yamori that Rise wasn't there, but Yamori ignored him and smashed a chair into his face. Yamori had caught Rise's scent on Kaneki and realized he was the one they wanted. As they moved to take Kaneki, Toka lashed out, kicking Yamori to protect him, but Yamori was too strong. He flung Toka aside and grabbed Kaneki by the throat, beating him relentlessly. Kaneki, driven into a corner, finally unleashed his ghoul powers, catching everyone off guard. He was a one-eyed ghoul. Kaneki tried to fight back, but Yamori stabbed him with his Kagune. Toka rejoined the fight, but Ayato quickly took her down, overwhelming her with his own ghoul strength. Yamori slammed Kaneki's head against the table, then into the mirror, again and again, trying to break him, but Kaneki refused to shatter. Frustrated yet fascinated, Yamori was finally calmed by Nico. They took Kaneki and left for the 11th ward. When Yoshimura and Yomo returned to Anteiku, they were met with a horrifying scene: blood everywhere, and a weakened Toka. Yoshimura immediately knew Yamori had taken Kaneki. Without hesitation, he ordered Yomo to gather all the members. Anteiku would temporarily close. When everyone had assembled, Yoshimura delivered grim news: they might never see Kaneki again. His words shocked Toka, and Nishiki didn't understand what he meant. Yoshimura explained that Aogiri Tree was made up of elite, battle-hardened ghouls. Rescuing Kaneki from their hideout would be nearly impossible. And they couldn't forget the CCG. He was certain they'd be sending reinforcements to crush Aogiri Tree. Any attempt to save Kaneki would put all of them at extreme risk. Despite the danger, Toka, Hinami, and Nishiki insisted they wanted to rescue him. Yoshimura admitted he wanted to help Kaneki too. He had only warned them so they would understand. He couldn't guarantee anyone's safety. Yoshimura brought in Tsukiyama too because he wants to rescue Kaneki. Toka refused to let Tsukiyama join the mission, but Yoshimura argued that their chances of successfully rescuing Kaneki would increase if Tsukiyama came along. Still, Toka was reluctant. She suspected Tsukiyama wanted to eat Kaneki. However, Yomo assured her that he would take full responsibility for keeping Tsukiyama in check. Yoshimura then asked about the CCG's movements. Yomo informed him that the CCG was ready to launch their attack after the all civilians had been evacuated. Meanwhile, Kaneki finally woke up. He was in Yamori's room, chained and helpless. As the CCG mobilized, Yamori began torturing Kaneki. He ordered Banjo to clean up the mess before leaving the room. Banjo promised Kaneki he would find a way to help him escape, urging him to endure a little longer. Banjo also revealed that he knew Rise was already dead, but Kaneki had kept the truth from Banjo to spare him from more grief. He informed Kaneki that the next ones to clean the room would be his companions, Shu and Haru, and told him to relay anything important to them. Back at Anteku, Yuta arrived, and he was willing to help. Yamori returned to force-feed Kaneki an insect as part of his twisted torment. The CCG had reached Aogiri Tree's hideout, also the Anteku team. Gunfire erupted between the CCG and Aogiri. However, Marude noticed that they were being overwhelmed. Aogiris were using their Kagune as shields, rendering CCG bullets nearly useless. In a show of determination, Marude personally entered the battlefield, swiftly taking down multiple ghouls, impressing many of the CCG officers. Meanwhile, Suzuya commandeered Marude's beloved motorbike to charge directly at the enemy lines. Marude was devastated, even brought to tears over his bike, but Suzuya's daring move cleared the path. They could now enter the building. Marude quickly ordered the rest of the team to storm in, his heart still aching for his ruined motorcycle. In secret, the Anteku group made their way up the building, silently eliminating Aogiri members. Amon finally encountered Toka, seeking revenge for Mado's death. Toka struggled against Amon's strength and was frustrated. She didn't have time to fight him now. Thankfully, the Bin brothers arrived, allowing her to escape. Elsewhere, Yuta, Tsukiyama, and Yomo surrounded Noro and launched a coordinated attack. Despite being overwhelmed by the Bin brothers, Amon refused to back down. He would not let Mado's death be in vain. Through sheer will and determination, he managed to defeat the brothers. As Toka continued her search for Kaneki, Ayato attacks her, but Nishiki arrived in time to protect her and lose consciousness. Meanwhile, Shinohara's team, along with Amon, reached the rooftop, just in time for the arrival of the one-eyed owl. Shinohara quickly informed Marude, who then ordered him to send men to confront Owl. However, he told Shinohara to only choose subordinates who were ready to die alongside him to buy time. Yamori had ordered Kaneki to count down from 1000 in intervals of 7 seconds. At first, Kaneki didn't understand why, but eventually, he realized it was Yamori's way of trying to keep him sane. All the while, Yamori was ripping off Kaneki's fingers and toes, over and over again.
And over, and over, and over, and over, and over, and over!
Every time they regenerated, Kaneki was reminded of the monster he had become. Yamori eventually confessed why he was so obsessed with Kaneki. He was fascinated by Kaneki's incredible regenerative ability, an ability he owed to Dr. Kano's experiment, which had turned him into a half-ghoul by transplanting Riz's organs into him. To further torment him, Yamori inserted a live centipede into Kaneki's ear. He took pleasure in every scream, every twitch of agony. Broken and in pain, Kaneki begged Yamori to just kill him. Inside his mind, Kaneki spoke to Riz. He recalled the teachings of his mother, who always told him it was better to be hurt than to hurt others. But to Riz, that philosophy was meaningless. She reminded him of how his mother died, working herself to exhaustion to support her ungrateful sister, completely neglecting her own health. Kaneki had always been alone, until Hideyoshi came into his life. He gave Kaneki a reason to smile again. But Riz warned him, Hideyoshi would eventually die too, and it would be Kaneki's fault. Back in reality, Yamori captured Shu and Haru, Kaneki's only hope of escape. Yamori forced Kaneki to choose, one of them must die. If he refused to choose, Yamori would kill them both. Kaneki couldn't speak. Paralyzed by fear, he made no decision. So Yamori began choking Haru. Shu begged Kaneki to choose him instead, willing to die for her. But still, Kaneki said nothing. Yamori killed Haru, then Shu. Both were gone, because Kaneki was too weak to act. Devastated, Kaneki blamed himself for everything. He saw visions of Toka, Hinami, and Hideyoshi are dead, all because he had lived by his mother's belief that it was better to be the one hurt. But in the end, he only hurt both himself and everyone around him. He remembered wishing his mother had lived for him, instead of dying for her sister who didn't deserve it. He didn't want to be left behind. He didn't want to be alone. For once, he wished his mother had chosen him. Even if it meant hurting others, at least she would have lived. And in that moment, Riz agreed. Sometimes, you have to walk away from others in order to save the ones who matter. Kaneki's mother couldn't do that. Not because she was kind, but because she was weak. Riz looked at him and asked, will you continue to let yourself be hurt like this? Will you keep letting people do to you whatever they want? Kaneki replied no. Riz warned him, once Aogiri's ranks grow, they'll bring chaos to the 20th ward. Will you let that happen? Kaneki answered, I won't. She asked again, do you have the strength to protect your friends? Kaneki said, I do. Riz asks, are you saying you accept me now? Kaneki replied, no, I don't need to accept you, because I've already surpassed you. She questioned, then are you making the wrong choice? He said no, I'm not wrong. This world is what's wrong. And with that, Kaneki consumed Rizz in his mind, and his hair turned white. Back in the real world, Yamori taunted him, saying their fun was almost over since the CCG would soon arrive. His job was to slaughter them all. Just as he was about to devour Kaneki, he paused and shocked. He saw Rizz. Delighted, Yamori attacked, but Kaneki had broken free of his restraints. He seized the chains and used them to strangle Yamori. Before Yamori could push him away, Kaneki bit into him. Kaneki found no pleasure in the taste of his blood, and he dodged Yamori's every attack with ease. Yamori managed to grab Kaneki's leg and twist it, but Kaneki still struck him back. His leg regenerated immediately, only enraging Yamori more. He launched a flurry of attacks, stabbing and slamming Kaneki into the ground. But Kaneki stood, unfazed. Unleashing his Kagune, Kaneki engaged Yamori in a brutal, final fight. Blow after blow, they clashed, until at last, Kaneki brought him down. He stared coldly at the broken man and gave him an order. The same order Yamori once gave him, count down from 1000 by sevens. Yamori refused. Kaneki stabbed him, again, and again. Yamori was defeated and sobbing, so he began counting. Kaneki pulled the centipede from his ear. The torment was over. And then, he devoured Yamori.